Sales is merely a transference of feelings, right?
Yeah.
Like if I can make you feel the way I feel about my product, then like we're going to have a sale, period. But it's also a transference of feelings as to what's going on in your world.
In the context of the professional, sales is the creation of certainty, not necessarily a transference of it.
Sales job is a noble pursuit. And that with sales, you have the luxury of making money and helping people at the same time.
Even business has a delay because you have to scale, you have to hire other people, you have to get them good.
We don't fire people with bad numbers and a good attitude.
Sales training everywhere sucks. And the people who are doing it a certain way, they're giving people a bad experience and they haven't been told, they haven't been exposed to the information how to do it better in a way where the homeowner says, thank you at the end, instead of, gosh, I hope they don't cancel.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Leads to Deals podcast, where we talk about everything from leads to deals and everything we talk about leads to deals. Who's this podcast for? You, my listeners who are looking to better their lives, better their financial situation, and master the art of communication through sales and entrepreneurship to become that multi-millionaire. I know you're going to find today's podcast tremendously valuable. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to click the subscribe button. I want you to click it now. I want you to send me a high five through the computer screen by hitting that like button and leaving a comment. For content creators like myself, it's the way I know I'm doing a good job. And it's the way my guests know that we were able to provide you value. Now, today's episode is proudly sponsored by the best data company out there for all things real estate, whether you're an investor, wholesaler, mortgage refinance company, or even a solar sales team. If you cold call, drop mail in the United States, go to synergydata.io. At the time of this video, it's only $199 a month for 10,000 free records. And you can even get credit scores and all the distress flags you need for the most successful campaigns. Visit synergydata.io today. Now, in today's episode, we have a true sales tactician, a coach, a mentor, a leader. He believes, like I do, that a sales job is a noble pursuit, and that with sales, you have the luxury of making money and helping people at the same time. And unlike many other industries, the more you learn, the more you will absolutely earn. He's also the host of one of the greatest sales podcasts out there called Close More Sales. Welcome, Ian Ross.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Scott.
Dude, I'm excited. What we were just talking about off screen, I want to kind of go into it, and that is like an attack vector. Me and you were just lamenting before we hopped on this. We were like, hey, man, both of us see real estate as a widget itself, because our main core functions are being sales professionals, the art of communications, et cetera, et cetera. So walk me through your mindset on that, and then how you kind of have, where you started as an outsider and how real estate became a product for you.
Sure. So my first commission-only sales role was selling life insurance.
Love it.
That was the first one, and I was selling it to truck drivers in New York State, who that company was not super on the up and up, meaning the leads didn't even know I was going to be trying to pitch them life insurance when I had the appointment. So that is a way to cut your teeth on being persuasive and providing value in someone's home or over the phone or over Zoom or whatever.
How old were you when you started that one?
It was relatively recent. I was in my 30s, it was early 30s.
So your first sales job was a commission-only sales job?
Well, that I had been selling before because I'd been managing bookstores in New York, but I didn't even realize I was doing a sales job at the time. So that was a big thing. Like I realized when people would come into the store, and with a bookstore for a retail space, it's cheaper online. It's cheaper on Amazon now. Everyone knows this, right? So to come into the space, you're almost willing to participate in this sort of human interaction process, which played to my advantage. People would come up and go like, I'm looking for a recommendation. And I was inspired by a friend of mine who worked at a hot dog store who, which is crazy. Like, this is New York City, right? He worked at a hot dog stand. And these are very fancy, like $14, $20 hot dogs with crazy names that didn't explain the ingredients. And people would come in and they would say like, what is this? This is called like the Bette Midler. Like, what's this? What's good here? And instead of going, what do you like in terms of ingredients? He flipped the approach and would go like, how's your day been today? Like, kind of a crummy day. You go, how are you with spicy food? You like spicy? Don't like spicy? Like, no, I like spicy. Okay. Crummy day, you like spicy. Tell me you're not lactose intolerant. No, I love cheese. Sit down. going to be a decent amount of money, but you're going to love this. And he got tipped more than the cost of the hot dog every single time. I was so inspired by that idea that when people would come in and say, I need recommendations for a book, instead of going, well, here are the staff picks, here's the bestsellers, I would say, how was your day today? What did you read last that you loved, but what did you hate about the thing that you loved? I would just weird questions that people are not used to answering about books. In fact, the owner of the store used to challenge me to like sell an obscure book over the weekend that no one was buying. And I would get it done over the weekend. And I had no idea this was a sales role. I wasn't paid commission for that. But I would come and I would ask questions like, all right, what did you love about that book? Okay, are you looking for something more like that, in that same vein, or do you want to go left field but has that same level of entertainment? I was asking great questions what sales is. And they'd go, they'd answer it, and then I'd go, okay, hang on a second. I'd come back with 2 books. I would often include one of the books that I was supposed to sell that weekend that I'd been challenged by the owner, and go, read the first page and the back, and then tell me which one you want to walk home with. And I just did that over and over again. I was selling books, not getting paid more for the sale, but that's what I loved about working in bookstores, working retail. So I had developed experience with asking great questions and getting people to take action in a unique way, but I wasn't paid commission. So my first sales role was life insurance.
Do you consider yourself like a sociable person? Are you an extrovert, as they say? Or do you think you're more introvert?
I would say I'm an ambivert in that I definitely get energy from other people, but I need to recharge on my own fairly frequently.
I understand.
Which I think is I think it's the super hack for sales. Because one of the biggest challenges for extroverts is that they struggle to shut up, right? They have the thought and then they want to say it and they don't let the prospect verbalize what's important to them because they want to go, oh, I like basketball too. It's like, they don't care about that. They just want to tell you that they like basketball. And then you would transition them back on topic. But because you get so much energy from people, extroverts make the mistake of like, if they've got an itch they want to share and they just scratch the itch and that hurts the sale.
Yes.
The problem with the pure introvert, which is literally Steve Trang, is that sometimes what can happen is they can do very well tactically, but they get burned out talking to people all the time. For me, I feel very lucky that I have parents that my mom is a pure extrovert, my dad's a pure introvert, and by pure genetic luck, I happen to be the in-between ambivert. I get energy from people, but also I'm okay being on my own. I'm okay not scratching the itch of having to talk. And so I think it's the best thing for sales because I don't get burned out talking to people, but I'm also able to quiet the voice inside of me that wants to offer an opinion or wants to say something. I can shut up because I know this is how to win.
Yeah, I don't know if I really ever rationalized it like this, but I love what you said because I think about myself socially in the real world, complete introvert. Like, I don't want to talk to people. I just want to do my thing. Everybody get out of the way. But when I'm in a sales cycle or here in front of the staff, this whole other button just comes on. And I was taught like Hollywood, like, hey, listen, everything that you're doing. And I started to appreciate like sales as being like anybody who's an actor. And not that you're being false, but there's a script behind it. There's this thing behind it. And so it kind of forces you to be maybe somebody who's outside of your comfort zone. But if you're coming from it, like you said, as an introvert, you're not over talking the seller. Because one of the hardest things I'm sure guys like me and you have to do when dealing with people who have a little bit more excitable of an attitude and training them in sales, it's like 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use it in that percentage. Like if I can just get you to listen 2x more than you'll talk, like we've accomplished so much in sales. Like I can teach you how to ask a tactical question or a digging in, a second layer question, and then just shut up, let them talk and ask them to shut up. So this all makes sense.
Yeah. So that's to answer your question. I'm an in-between. I'm an ambivert, but
did you make that word up? Is this a scientific name?
It's a real word, which is an in-between. It's ambivert rather than intra or extra. It's sometimes you're one or the other. I wish I made that up. You know what? I'm gonna claim it. I made that up. That's mine. When you look that up, I put that in the dictionary.
So I'm thinking like real quick, I'm thinking like Seinfeld, like working in New York, you know, it says this guy's at a bookstore. How the hell do you go from bookstore to I went to risk my life in commission only sales?
That's such a long story for that. But I tried to, I haven't talked about this on a podcast before. So you're getting something new, which is I tried to be a software engineer from there, which is like, I learned real quickly because I got swayed by the marketing of these like programming boot camps that were just flaring up at the time. Go do something for 3 months and then I can make enough money and get benefits instead of getting paid like sure, I'm managing bookstores. I have a tiny aspect of leadership among some people, but in New York City, you're making no money.
Sure.
I mean, just no, you're barely surviving.
Yes.
And so I was like, well, it'd be nice to not be barely surviving anymore. So I was attracted to that. I tried to do that for a little while. I realized while doing that, that I liked the aspect of being able to codify things and break down things algorithmically. I'm not mathematically skilled, but I liked the idea of thinking it's this step and then this step. And if something happens in between, here's how you readjust, which played into my training later.
Yes.
But where I really stood out was I got into a programming fellowship called the Recurse Center in Brooklyn. It's crazy that I got into this, if anyone is aware of this fellowship, because these are, for lack of a better word, I'm sorry if I offend anyone at the Recurse Center, super nerds. I mean, they're geniuses that literally are like, leave me alone for a couple months. I'm going to program a chat bot that only communicates in tic-tac-toe. And I'm not kidding. It's literally like things like that. One of the things I learned while there was that I could talk abstractly about all of these incredible concepts with the people there. I just wasn't good at the actual work. So I spent a lot of time on the like middle floor at this fellowship, talking to all the people about the idea and communicating with them. And that's when I found out about a role called a tech evangelist, which is someone who, say, like a tech evangelist at Microsoft. It's essentially a performance sales role where you go and speak on stage about, here's our tool, our software developer tool, and you speak to a room of developers at a conference and inspire them to go, you know what, we should tell the people at our company to get that tool. They're not paid commission because they're not trying to get individuals to take action, but they're an evangelist for a product or service at the company and explain the complex in a way that inspires, for lack of a better term, the nerds to incentivize leadership to go get this tool.
Nice.
And I wrote down on a note card, 10 years from now, I will be a tech evangelist standing on stage, introducing the world to the next iPhone, 10 years. And it was literally immediately after that, I got offered my first sales role. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to get in as a programmer because I wasn't good enough algorithmically.
Sure.
So I was like, well, let's get into tech sales. But I don't have the background to get into tech sales. That'll take too long. So let's just get into a sales role and I'll leverage that. First role was life insurance.
Sure.
So it was literally, that was the trajectory.
That's I was going through your bio and I saw this like course of JavaScript, course of game programming, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, wow, I literally wrote, didn't expect to see this with the sales guy. It doesn't fit the normal avatar.
No. And now and before I even wanted to do that, before I was managing bookstores, I wanted to be an actor. You mentioned performance, and I didn't want to be a movie actor. I wanted to be a stage actor, which is the most relevant thing to a sales role I can think of inside of entertainment, because it doesn't matter how you're feeling that day. It doesn't matter if you just got broken up with or if your grandfather's going into hospice, you have to perform in front of that audience for that matinee. And that same energy I take to, like, I'm on a sales call. I leave everything else behind. I'm going to engage my active listening. I'm still myself, but I'm performing as myself as the salesperson in this moment, regardless of how I feel, to pursue the best outcome. My prospect is the audience.
You know, one of the things my mentors taught me in sales about that kind of Hollywood thing and performing as your best self, it's like, sales is merely a transference of feelings, right?
Yeah.
Like if I can make you feel the way I feel about my product, then like we're going to have a sale, period. But it's also a transference of feelings as to what's going on in your world. And so if you don't leave your garbage bags at the front door when you walk into the sales floor, you are harming this person you're about to spend 90 minutes. You are hurting this person where your product may be a solution. So you do have to train yourself that like everything's perfect in this moment. My personal life is completely compartmentalized. It's over here. It's over to the side. Because going into a high pressure, high stress sales environment, particularly where you're down in numbers, and it's like, and you need this next check, that's when you have to be more disciplined, when that next sales matters so much. If you don't have that Hollywood, as we're saying now, persona, where we can put on this act and we can do a takeaway with a deal that we need so bad. Like I can just deliver the strongest takeaway. I completely understand, Mrs. Jones, this probably isn't for you. When you can say that and you know you need Mrs. Jones to buy, like you have your sales cycle going. So it's really refreshing to hear you kind of say that same thing that you learn so fast, though, seems like.
So, and you know this, there's so many people who have been, because theoretically, in terms of time, I actually haven't been in sales that long.
Yeah.
But there are so many people who you'll hear this like with car sales or in a lot of B2C space. Guys like, I got 30 years of experience. No, you don't. You got 1 year of experience 30 times. You stop growing and you're just doing the same thing over and over. The reason I got good so fast is because I iterate and improve. I listen to my calls. I take notes. I listen to the call again to see if I missed anything. I practice in the mirror. I get experience using this when revenue is not on the line. So when it is on the line, I'm more comfortable.
Amen.
I role play every single day with myself. I got good to practice doing a podcast and being able to riff with no script.
Yes.
I had ChatGPT give me prompts, but I had to challenge and talk as if I hadn't, as if I had a prepared speech and I didn't ahead of time using like a Toastmasters technique.
Yes.
I am huge on iterating and improving. And so I got good very quickly at sales. I view it like, because a lot of people ask me like, well, how did you do this? How do you get comfortable? And I said, the simple answer is like, you just need to put in the reps. The good news is, much like going to the gym, if you iterate and improve on it, you can do fewer reps and get stronger quicker.
Yes.
It doesn't require simply just doing it for 30 years. If you add more weight and because you think about all the consequences of that one call and listen to the recording and listen to it while driving. My wife has heard me listen to sales calls I had made and they worked while we're on a road trip. And she's like, this call worked. Why are you listening to it? I'm like, because there was a part I felt unclear. I need to hear what he said and what I said. And if he felt I was unclear, so I can be better. So even though I got the deal, maybe I could have gotten the deal 10 minutes faster. And I'm always doing that. And that's how I got good fast.
There's so many like nuggets in what you just said, even behind the words of what you were saying. I think that if like we could just offer some simple strategies or tactics, is if somebody could just be disciplined enough to record the next 30 days worth of calls and then just spend the next 30 days thereafter or the following 60 days thereafter, whatever it may be, actually forcing themselves, because nobody wants to hear themselves. I heard this phrase a long time. Oh, I used to do this at some of the speaking events. I'd say, all right, everybody in here, raise your hand if you have a child, a baby, whatever. Everybody have to raise your hand if you have an ugly baby. Nobody puts their hands up. Okay, that's how you feel about your sales pitch. It's your baby and you've been working on it and it's this thing, but no one wants to, there's ugly kids out there, I'm sorry. And there's ugly pitches out there. And so, but that realization like, okay, I'm probably lying to myself. I probably could have done something differently. It can't always be that this customer's broke. It can't always be that they need to talk to the spouse. It can't always be these types of things. So I love what you said about being disciplined enough to get over the fact that you sound like shit when you play yourself back. You just don't.
Yeah.
You don't sound like you thought you did, sound as a movie star and this thing. No, you actually sounded miserable and you used the word 42 times. And now you have to fix that, but you can't fix that unless you recognize it. So was this a mentor that kind of instilled these types of things in you? What kind of drove you to be like, okay, I actually need to treat this like a sports play and I need to have the tape and I need to review the tape?
I'm not sure. I think I've always been like that. I joke with Steve Trang that I say, I don't have an addictive personality. I have an obsessive personality. And he's like, you're doing semantics. I was like, that's wrong. But I got obsessed with sales. I got obsessed with it. And all the nuances of understanding sales, it's all the little aspects around it. It's not just tonality. It's not just word choice. Not just things like, because what I'm doing now, I'm listening to like Ericksonian hypnotherapy audiobooks, figure out
100%.
language patterns and going deeper and deeper. And then I do other stuff of like, what about macroeconomics, human behavior? What causes someone to want to take action at scale? Where were they at? What childhood trauma do I have to overcome in this brief moment that I could say in a single line that makes someone realize they need to take action right now? I'm going 10 layers deeper than most people, to the point that Steve's like, man, I know David Sandler and like Chris Voss reached into there, but you're going like 10 layers deeper to try and find something. And that part of that is a little bit of an ego thing because I want to make something new, not just regurgitate old stuff. But I've always had that. I'd say I got my first sales book was someone who I know you're also inspired by is Way of the Wolf, Jordan Belfort. That was my first one.
That's so crazy. That blows my mind because that didn't come out but was so long ago. Like you're going to be the most sophisticated sales person that I've had on my podcast in the shortest period of time. And that's a compliment. I don't want to take anything back. But you didn't say a book from the 90s. You didn't say a book from the 2000s. Like you're in 2010s territory here.
Yeah. And I've read all those other ones.
Yeah, I know, but it's crazy.
That was the first one I read to try and apply it. And you even mentioned something where I actually disagree with Jordan Belfort. And it's not even disagree. It's just have a different approach.
Yeah.
which is, because I heard this a lot in life insurance, which is sales is the transference of energy. And then I heard someone say sales is the transference of emotion. And with life insurance, I thought that made even more sense because, like, yeah, we needed to be energetic to an extent. We need to have an aspect of transferring energy. But realistically, with life insurance, the person who buys it never sees the benefit. I'm just selling the emotion of feeling like your family's protected on the worst day of their lives. And then I heard Jordan Belfort have an elaboration on that, which is, he says, sales is the transference of emotion, and then emotion is certainty. And I was like, oh, that's great. And I made a lot of money with that. After life insurance, I transitioned to solar, and that's when I got really good. I started making really, really good money. But as I got farther on and started working with Steve, I did a tech sales job after that, then launched my own virtual wholesaling company, absorbed by Steve to do training because I was already getting better results from my cold callers than he was. And that's a whole story there. But I realized even that's not quite true. You can still make plenty of money like that. I realized in the context of the professional, sales is the creation of certainty, not necessarily a transference of it. You gave a great example there, which is it doesn't matter if I'm certain as long as the prospect is certain as the end. I can go, you even feel like they're going to hop on these calls if I sell you this? I can be hesitant. All that really matters is that you're like, get out of the way. I need this. I am certain.
Yes.
And so you can make plenty of money. It's a choice. You can sell with your certainty trying to transfer it, but I think it's a choice. It's not actually a requirement. I can go, is this even for you? This probably won't even work. I mean, or this won't work in your industry. I can get you to go, no, I'll make it work. I can do that if I want. It's just understanding at the higher level, I get to choose. And so that comes to the sort of the ambivert thing. Because some people, especially the introvert, who can be really good at being tactical, the challenge then is they can burn out. You've got enough salespeople, you see this happen sometimes, where people are like, come on, you can do this. I know you want this. And they're like, oh, at the end of the call, whether they got it or didn't. And I would say it's because you're being too focused on trying to be energetic and transfer that energy rather than just focusing on what that person needs to hear for them to get energetic. And if I can pull back and you get certain, that's as good as me transferring it. All that matters is I can be adaptable based on what the prospect needs.
It's so funny because there's so many different ways that we can go in all this conversation. You remind me of so many core fundamentals. Again, behind everything that I hear you saying, I feel and see so much more. And what you were talking about when you kind of did that takeaway and then the customers coming back to you like, no, I have the certainty. There's no better sales tactic than having the customer sell themselves. Right. And so like, I love that because in this analogy, like you're being able to use your art of communication to get them to say why this is good for me. And then I was thinking, you know what the greatest high amongst that? I had a mentor teach me, he was like, hey man, listen, for you to really do this long-term, you're gonna need to understand who the value is. Like the value, yes, you're gonna get a sweet commission check in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, but I know you're gonna go burn it on this and this and this. They're gonna have this product forever. So what I want you to do is I want you to reward yourself by getting them to say thank you at the end of the pitch. If you can create your sales where your main goal is to have them at the end say, thank you for closing me. Now, the seller never said, thank you for closing me. They would say, thank you for taking the time today to just all this information. And I know I was tough on you. And I know I told you as soon as I shook your hand, I wasn't going to make any decision. It's because I had this other person who did this other thing and et cetera, et cetera. But getting that as a recognition at the end of a call or a face-to-face where the customer says, thank you for taking my tens of thousands of dollars. Oh my God, there's nothing better than that.
The reason there's because much like you, I noticed like 8 good things about that when you point that out. Because I'm huge on making sure I am orienting around going towards the right direction, right? I want to have the right type of compass. And so by even shifting the focus from the commission check, the sale, whatever, to them saying thank you means that more deals go through across the line. You get less buyer's remorse. You're able to pull away so that they sell themselves because you don't come off with commission breath. Because commission breath would never get a thank you. It's all these other things that are solved by being focused on a nuance of wanting them to thank you for getting them to sell you. So that's beautiful. I truly love that.
We talked about insurance, and I'll also do it because I want to talk about real estate and cold calling, et cetera. But that was a commission-only sales job.
Mm-hmm.
Was the next roles commission? How long were you in a commission-only environment?
So because the goal was the goal was never life insurance, even though they did a good enough job of trying to paint the picture at this company of how much money I mean, it was as close to an MLM without being one as makes no difference, you know? It wasn't actually because I know MLM is kind of a dirty word. It was as close to a pyramid scheme as not being it. But the real thing was you made more money from selling insurance than recruiting people, but you were incentivized aggressively to recruit all the time.
Sure.
And also your commission could even get cut if you didn't continue to recruit. I didn't like that, especially since I didn't like the recruiting tactics, because I wanted to hire salespeople. I didn't want to hire someone who wanted financial freedom and surprise you're in a sales role. Right?
Yes.
I knew what I was getting into, but that company was never going to be long-term. I was only there like 7 months to then get hired at a solar company where that wasn't commission only, but it was, I mean, I was paid 20,000 over a year. I mean, it might as well, it was just so that I could be a W-2, so I couldn't sell other things, right? It was a business decision. I was as close to commission only as made no difference. I couldn't cover my gas to drive around to appointments with the amount they were paying me. So that might as well have been, but that was the next setup there.
Yeah, I think that's very similar. Like you said, the commission only. I always go back and I look back and I know how much tax pain it caused me as a young man being commission only, and just how many lulls there were in my original initial sales career. But being in an environment where you have to hunt what you kill, and that you have to create a sale because there's a small or no safety net, is such a big advantage. At that moment, it will seem like a disadvantage. But if you can put yourself in a fight or flight situation with this craft, with this new concepts that you're going to try to enact in your life, it'll force you to do it. Like I have a piano at my house and I don't play piano. It's got a little button. I can press it. I can play it. Now, I sometimes sit in front of it, but if I had to pay rent, best believe at the end of the evening, I would be focusing on that. And so it's just one of these things that it's such a great reciprocating value that you get out of it. Because I read it in your bio where you're like, this is one of these jobs where the more you put into it, you will definitively get that more back out of it, versus you can be a roofer and you may be 15% faster with putting nails through the shingles, but that doesn't mean, or if you learn how to swing a hammer, but it doesn't always equate to making more money like sales or the art of communication does.
And the reality is, even business has a delay because you have to scale, you have to hire other people, you have to get them good. It's not as directly correlated in terms, I think sales is the perfect vehicle and representation for personal development because you are responsible for your output. And as you get better, you see your bank account go up. In business, when you hire people, your bank account actually might go down as you're getting better. And that's a thing for a lot of people who had sales role, myself included, who had a sales role and then starts a business, starts to go, wait a second, this meant I was doing something wrong before. I'm actually doing something right now. So that's a different conversation, but sales is that it's just the perfect representation. I think there's only 3 levers you can pull at any given time, at least as a sales professional. You can either be doing more work, increasing your skills, or working on your fuel, your mindset. And if you can, I say 3 levers for a very specific reason, because you only have 2 hands. So my belief is if I can crank my fuel, my mindset to the floor, so my foot's standing on it, that like, I know I need to do this, then it's just, okay, I only have so much time. We all have the same amount of time in a week. You know this. I wish we could, if I had a magic device to have more time, it'd be great, but we all are operating on the same amount of time. Now it's, okay, I need to just do more work, right? Yes. Or I need to get better at what I do. I'm going to say something slightly incendiary that Steve Trang has warned me against doing. Part of the reason I think that Andy Elliott does so well, I'm going to be careful here. It's like, he doesn't really have really good sales training. It's not sales training. But plenty of people in sales roles don't actually, the lowest hanging fruit for them is not getting better at sales. It's just having someone shout at them to have the mindset to do more work. And if you can just make more calls, you'll make more money. So I've come to a better place with that with him, because I was so frustrated. I was like, it's like forcing someone to say yes or no. So it was driving me nuts that he was called a sales trainer. And then I realized, we're down different audiences. Some people are just getting started, in which case you just need to call more. You just need to dial twice as much. You just need to work an extra hour. You need to spend less time at the water cooler. You need to go, I need to work my butt off and then I'll get results. And then once you hit that threshold, Now you want to get more efficient with your time and ask better questions and get better. And that's when we come in. So I just realized, oh, we're just dealing with people at different stages in their journey. And it made me a lot more forgiving and welcoming to the idea, because I was very frustrated because I've been watching and I'm like, this is not sales training. Okay, it's mindset stuff. And most salespeople, the lowest hanging fruit is their mindset. And then once you can do enough work, now you can get better at the questions. So I came to that place. It's like most people just need to work more. You're just not working enough. And I know some people who I've trained who get in this, and you know this too, they get in a loop of, I got to get better. I got to ask better questions. I got to get smarter. I got to better with my tonality. But they're actually just using the information, the education as entertainment, because the activity has to come alongside it. You're not really learning if you're not actually doing. So some people go, no, but until my pitch is perfect, I won't dial a single person, or I'll dial one or two. It's like, no, it's those are the only two levers. It's just like most of the time you need to be doing enough work. And then once you realize my closing ratio is 6% and I'm dialing all day, now we get you better. So I've come to a much better place with that, but most people just need to do more work.
It's funny because that's so much for me, because I'm on the same opinion vein as you in regards to some of these other coachings that are more Andrew Tate than they are like tactical resources.
It drives me nuts.
And then I also think, though, and it's ironic because you kind of came into the game later, but I'm old enough that I came in under the Zig Ziglars and the John Maxwells, which were very Christian based behind all the sales strategies and tactics, and, cutthroat of sales may be. It was also very like being a good human. If you're a good human, you can be a good salesperson. And so that's what I tell people all the time here. Matter of fact, somebody today, he was talking about 3 people to get rid of. He said, hey man, but this kid's attitude and this, and this. I said, come on, what do we always say here? We don't fire bad people. We don't fire people with bad numbers and a good attitude. Because if they have good attitude and they're willing to learn and they're willing to follow our guidance, I can fix this, bro. It's when they don't want to listen and they won't follow guidance, and I can't do it. And so, you raised such a good point, but going to your entertainment value, I am so blessed because I'm an addict. What I mean by addict is I'm kind of like you, like I get obsessive about things. If I had to only learn from my phone sales, I'd be destroyed, because the algorithms and some other things, and my getting text messages and all this other stuff. I was so blessed that I came up reading books, and I'm a huge book connoisseur, but I didn't have any distractions on my sales education journey. I could go through and I could highlight it, and I could take my time and I could highlight it. And even back then there wasn't audio books per se. And so I wasn't at the gym working out, not highlighting, looking at the hot girl in the spandex, and then trying to supposedly listen to this thing. I was actually educating myself. And so I see this other side where people do it more entertainment. So much so, what blew my mind about, I had never been to an REI event until like 4 years ago. Never been to anything like that ever. And never went to a concert room. I had made millions already. I was a sales guy. I walk into this room and I was like, oh, wow, look at all these people here. This is so great. I listened to everything. I came back 3 or 4 months later, same fucking people, same problems. I said, oh, you guys are addicted to the circuit. Like you just want to come to the show. In my head, it was like, why wouldn't you just come in, gather all this data, enact it? And until you've enacted these things, don't come back here and add more to your list of things you're not going to accomplish. And so what you just said resonates so well for me, particularly for the REI industry, where it's easy to get on this train of let me hear more, but not let me do more.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, so I paid Steve Train the cost of a car to mentor me when I had my virtual wholesaling business. And when I started, because it was a lot of money for me, it was just money I'd saved up selling. I hadn't made enough money to justify it yet at real estate. And I asked him, I was like, what's the best way to make use of this? Which already people aren't even asking him when they're paying him this. So I said, what's the best way to make use of this? And he said, for the call, like the calls, it's just the mentees, come with questions, like come with new questions. And so I internalized that as, okay, that if I have to come with new questions, that means I have to ask questions that I can solve over the week. So I have new questions. And so I would be on these relatively small groups. It was not like 500 people. It's like 5 guys or something.
Yeah.
And I'm having a new question every week because I made sure it was a question I asked that I could solve over 7 days based on what he told me. And I would see these people with the same question for 2 months. They're just like, yeah, I still haven't hired that guy. And I'm just like, it was unfathomable to me. Because I was like, you're not doing the thing. What are you
Yeah.
paying this for? And people will pay because then they feel like they're doing a thing rather than actually doing the thing. But I was like, this is money to me. And this is how I got good, is to use this stuff. So I said, I have to ask a question that I can act on over 7 days. Not even just act on. I want to make sure that I have a new question next week. And so that's how I got results. And like the people who do that and other aspects of their life, whether it's I go and read this book and now act on it. I was just in Columbus, Ohio, training this guy, Michael Smith. He's crushing it out there, training his team for a day. And he talked about used to having read, I don't know how many books in a year. And he made the shift that many other people you'll hear realize, which is like, oh, I'm just feeling like I'm learning, but I couldn't actually say what I learned from the book. Now he reads a book 3 times to make sure he does something for it before moving on to the next book. And he's like, I don't absorb everything, but I'll read it 3 times. So to make sure I'm actually doing something, if I pick the book worthy at my income level with my leadership abilities to actually read, it means it's worthy of reading 3 times because I actually have to do stuff. So I totally resonate with that idea. One more point I want to touch on. My favorite Zig Ziglar quote of all time is him saying, the people who say, I could sell ice to an Eskimo. I can sell anything to anyone. Like, that's not a salesperson. That's a con man, because the Eskimo doesn't need ice, right? Like, and I really, really resonate with that. And one of the things I realized why I was never meant for that life insurance company forever, or for anyone listening to this who's either at a company or promoting a product where either the product is not good, you don't believe in it, or your company isn't doing their customers right. One of 2 things will inevitably happen. Either you will never get as good as you could because you're not helping people the way you should be in what you're selling them, or your moral compass will erode over time. And chances are it's a bit of both. So if you can believe in what you were selling, you can have that conviction to be a good person, to care about the person. Steve and I both act like our moms are watching us at all times. Like I'm accountable to my mom, whether you want it to believe it's a higher power or whatever level you need for that. Mine is so immediate. I need to do every single thing I do, whether it's in my personal life or my professional life. I have to be able to be accountable as if my mom was right there and I could tell her, no, I sold them that because I think that would be good for him. And I just have that immediacy at all times. If you can have that, you can act with virtue all the time. And when you're doing that, it means you have a moral responsibility to do the takeaway when you need the sale, to ask the deeper question, to go deeper because you're helping them. And it inspires you to actually want to do the right techniques all the time instead of getting lazy and letting your commission breath or your bad question come through, because you'd be doing them a disservice. It's not even about you. If I know I'm helping you, I will want to do the better techniques because I can care about other people, because you have that right moral compass.
Yeah, I've Zig Ziglar, so many quotes in my house on glasses, everything come from him. But one of his also additionally famous ones is, if you help enough people get what they want out of life, you can have everything you want out of life. That one really rocked me at like 20 some years old, because I was like, I just took it as a fact. That is a fact. I help enough people get what they want out of life, I can get everything I want out of life. And I was like, okay, well, great. I'm in this position where I actually get paid to help people along the way. In other words, I get a commission for every single, because if I believe in my product, then therefore I am helping them. So I'm in this very unique situation where I don't have to be some benevolent guy going and handing out money on the streets to try to like build up this karma equity. I get to execute as my profession, and then I can have everything that I want out of life. And I said, well, wait a minute, Scott, you want a lot of things, which means you got to help a lot of people. And so it really just ended up this kind of self-feeding, capitalistic and philanthropic type of mindset or mentality that I had, that I was just blessed to hear certain things like that at a young age, because, I didn't go to college and I didn't do a bunch of these other things, but I really took the art of sales, or the profession of sales, as you've heard the word, like wordsmith. Like I really thought I was a wordsmith, not a blacksmith. I'm not a shoesmith. I'm not a roofer. I'm not this. I'm a wordsmith. And so if I'm going to be a wordsmith, it means I have to treat it like that profession and be one of the top in, whatever bubble that I was living in.
I'll say, and I don't mean to stroke your ego too much, but seeing what you've done with Lamasu, what you've done for the people who come to work for you, you're not just helping your client, like you're creating a ripple effect in communities that didn't have it until you showed up. So
Yeah.
like you are a living embodiment of the power of getting good at communication and teaching others to do the
Yeah.
same. That's why I admire you very much for that.
Thank you. And that's one of the things I worry about too when we talk about sales, because it's like, hey, sales is just the beginning of your journey. It's this power of communication. Again, it's the power of persuasion. But if you get really good in sales, almost all your relationships around you get better. Your relationships with your kids, your
Yeah.
relationship with your spouses, the relationships with a random stranger having a bad day in the car with road rage.
Yeah.
And sales will lead inevitably to entrepreneurship for almost everybody out there. And then that's when you get an additional level of being able to provide impact. And so I always encourage people. I want to, while we still have a few more minutes left, I want to talk real quick. One of the things we put on a topic is like, and I think we'll both have some words on this, but in general, why do you think real estate salespeople, some are just so terrible at what they're doing?
I don't know if it's unique to real estate other than
I
it's
agree.
just most salespeople just have bad training. It is, they've just been told, like you talked about being blessed enough to see the right messaging at the right time. There's an inverse of that, which is seeing the exact wrong messaging at the right time. And that has a ripple effect and develops bad habits. There's also this thing in sales in general, which is that we have this confirmation bias. And a
Mm.
lot of times you might have done something that you, I, Steve Trang, anyone who's really good at this could be like, you did this all wrong. You still got the deal. But you got the deal in spite of what you did, not because of it. But they go, no, like that's my technique is I say, you want to do this, yes or no, and shout at them. And they were like, okay. And you think because you got the deal, what you did across the board is the reason it was done. And so they reinforce that enough time through training, through old methodologies before people could just look online and view competitors and figure out prices when high pressure stuff worked more effectively because there was no alternative. And that person's still in a position of power. And I got 30 years of experience. I'm not going to listen to this kid. It's like, you got 1 year, 30 times, dude.
Yep.
You're just doing the same thing over and over again. Times have changed. You haven't. And I could point to that in 50 different ways of how your business is run. And you're doing the people who come and learn under you an even bigger disservice than you can imagine. Because not only are you running your bad effects on the industry, the prospects are having a bad experience, then the people who call who are good are having to overcome asking a similar question that the other guy had bought from some script online, but they gave him a bad experience the whole time because they were oriented around the wrong thing. But I think for the most part, it's not that salespeople in real estate suck. It's that sales training everywhere sucks. And the people who are doing it a certain way, they're giving people a bad experience and they haven't been told, they haven't been exposed to the information on how to do it better in a way where the homeowner says, thank you at the end instead of, gosh, I hope they don't cancel.
Yes. I talk about confirmation bias. Haven't thought about this probably in January 2022, I got my first high ticket sale. It was like $15,000. I was in Williamsburg, Virginia, face-to-face sales, $15,000. I'm a kid. I'm 21 right now at that time, maybe 21, 22, whatever. And 21. I just turned 21 actually. And I get my first sale and I'm like the peacock, boy.
Yeah.
I'm strong. And the cool part is I knew the next morning in front of the whole sales staff, they were going to call everybody up who got a deal. And I was finally going to be up front and they were going to have me speak. And this is where the confirmation bias got destroyed because I went up there and they were like, all right, so tell us about your deal. How'd you get the sale? And I'm not sure exactly what I said, but it would have been something like very arrogant or flippant, like, I just did the job, or I was just able to get them to say yes because they like me. Whatever I said, and I can't really remember the exact verbiage, I got slapped and humiliated so publicly, verbally, obviously, but so humiliated, like, this kid right here is exactly what you don't want to do. He has no clue how he got that sale, so he can't repeat whatever he did to get that sale. He thinks it was all him. He doesn't understand it was the fundamentals. They ate me alive, and I was like, okay, I am not fucking good at this job. I don't even understand how I got that deal. And it helped so much because that humiliation, if you will, because went from cloud 9 to fucking like -2. But that helped so much because I was like, okay, this is a tactical game. This is like an actual wireframe, and these are the processes, and I followed it. But here's actually why. And I had to reflect on that for days, but it really was helpful to be called out for being successful in the wrong way.
And you are already this personality that might have come to that realization anyway. But imagine even just you, if you had gotten that recognition there, like how much longer it would take you. And so that's what's happening for most people. It's that they're just in environments that the manager doesn't understand it either. And the head of the company doesn't understand it. And so they go, great work, just do more of that. And that gets reinforced over a decade. And by the time they come to us, they're like, no. See, I get yes 7 times and then it's automatic. And I was like, that's goofy nonsense. That's not really how people take action on things. So it's like people get all this different. I try and remember, I'm studying a little bit because I got 8 points I'm trying to get out. And I know we're getting tight on time. But I try and remind myself that everyone is acting rationally in their own brains based on their experiences and what they've been through. And it helps give me a decent amount of grace to other people and go like, this doesn't mean you're a moron. If I'd been through the exact same life experience and gotten the dopamine hits at the same time and gotten the reward the same way, like I might be at the same place. I'm just privileged enough. You said you're blessed enough to have gotten chewed out for that moment. Not everyone does. So I just try and remind myself, it's not the individual that's the problem. You've been systemically trained wrong. We train differently. But now once you know, now you can make the choice to change differently. But until you know, I don't blame you yet. If you're still hesitant, it's like, well, now it's on you. You get to decide if you want to be different or if you just want to be doing the same thing 30 years from now, hoping that as consumers get access to more information. I mean, who knows what the next thing is going to be? Smart glasses that can like tell if they're lying when they're looking at you. Like the reality is technology changes too and it advances. And the people who are stuck in the old ways will inevitably get left behind as things adapt and evolve. I want people to thank me for getting the sign up in the same way you had, rather than just hoping they don't change their mind.
Yeah, so much to cover there. Let's do this. Let's see if we can't take what we're talking about and walk into the conversation on cold callers, Ian.
Sure.
Because I know that you've had plenty of experience training cold callers. I've had a little bit myself. What is your experience with that? Like just walk me through, because I really don't know. I know that you have a certification or you've offered a certification. What's your experience with cold calling?
I'll catch you up on this. So that was the first thing, aside from just like selling high ticket items for Steve. That was the first thing which I was able to do. The first thing I did in terms of a training capacity is because when I came to an event, and one of the things I love about Steve is he is so transparent about what's going on in his business and what isn't, that he does no social media posture. There's no like, oh, we're the greatest and best, I'm the number one. He's like, no, we're struggling at this. I did this. Here are the real numbers. He was so honest. And I noticed when I came to an event, it was called like Wholesaling Blueprint. We haven't offered it for forever. But what I noticed was that my caller, I had one caller that I had trained myself to try and be as much like me as I could on a dialer, who was getting about 7 leads a day. And the service Steve was using, they were getting per person, getting about 7 a month.
Wow.
And I was like, this is crazy. What am I missing?
Yep.
And Steve was like, well, let's talk about that. Now, to be fair, they were qualifying a little bit more than mine. Mine was probably getting about, by his qualification, about 2.5 a day.
Yep.
But that's still a lot more than 7 a month.
Sure.
And so what I did is I came in, we had an outside service that we weren't managing them and doing this sort of like the babysitting and all this stuff that I'm amazed you've built up the infrastructure to have the patience that you have. And it's truly one of the things I find most admirable about you, because as much as I love salespeople, it is hard to manage them sometimes. Like I know I'm very hard to manage myself. So what we did is we started a certification, which is that you had to already be good, already be trained, already be calling people for real estate, and you would come in and do a 4-week thing that I was doing. So the hardest shift that I did, which may be actionable for you right now, is I changed the first 30 to 60 seconds of the call almost completely from how they were doing things. They were getting at that company on average about 40 hang-ups a day. And how they classified a hang-up was, hello? Hey, is this your property at 123 Main Street? Click, which is the worst.
Sure. We
don't even know if it is or not. You got to call that person again. It's the worst outcome possible.
It is.
So what the changes I made, which is like, assuming you're talking to the right person, saying the name like a friend, saying your name like a question, kind of some basic Jordan Belfort stuff. I introduced it into real estate and a few extra points that were kind of my own, that they went on average per caller from 40 hangups a day to 4.
Nice.
Which is a massive difference, because That's a lot more no's, as well as that's a lot more, oh, that's not my property. But what does that do? That means you're more efficient with the data. Now you're calling the right person, which has, as you know, ripple effects beyond simply the deals you're getting from that one cold calling session. So that was the first thing I did in terms of cold calling. I mean, it's also understanding that cold calling at its baseline, it's just kind of a version of marketing. It's just sales marketing. It's not sales, it's sales marketing. It's human effort marketing, which means it can be really affordable if you do it yourself. But I've recommended Llama to I'm not getting like 40 people now because I don't know anyone who's able to get better results at scale. I had this experience, I just didn't have the patience to grow something this big. When you're able to train people to be that good at scale, it's actually probably better than like pay-per-click, all those things, because they've already started the idea of the process of talking to people. There's this beauty in understanding that it's not just, are they a qualified lead? Are they qualified to answer questions? Are they the type of personality to engage in a sales process?
Yes.
And so a really good cold call lead, which is rare for most businesses because they don't have good, well-trained people, or they're not doing it themselves. They don't know how to do it. Really rare, but a really good one is actually probably the most valuable lead possible because they're primed for what you need to do next, in addition to being qualified. So when you understand it's an element of human effort marketing, it changes it very much from, I'm not trying to get you to take action on selling me your property at a discount. It's simply, I'm sifting and sorting effectively and also making sure you're ready to engage in the process when someone wants to call you to see what the next steps are.
Yeah, I was so naive when I came into this industry. I never intended to create Llama. I just came down here for my own greedy needs because I have my own wholesaling office out of Orlando, and that's it. But what I came to learn, I have this amazing company, Tennessee Home Buyers in Tennessee, like rock stars, OGs. They're in TV and billboards, and they're in mail and everything except for cold call. And the reason why they don't do cold call is because they've done it before multiple times, and it always fails, and it's always failed, and it's always failed. Then inversely, because the closers have gotten so used to PPC leads that the idea of even touching a non-opted-in lead is blasphemy.
Yeah.
But they were referred to me by the team over at Collective Genius, Sharper Business Solutions. And we were just talking to her yesterday, and she just reported 3 more deals yesterday. And for somebody like them, they demand a more sophisticated lead. They demand that a more sophisticated conversation happens before their closers take their time away from a tier 1 lead, and they better be calling another lead. And so something like this is, to me, it's a big deal. I also focused a lot on training them on real estate knowledge as well, too. So what about that when you get a newbie on real estate knowledge?
This is where, and I don't disagree. The reason we would depart here is just because I'm actually deeply bored with real estate. I heard you made just some post one time of I'm only in this for a short period of time. I'm already I'm kind of tired of real estate. I'm tired of talking about houses and kitchens and roofs and ARV and and that's so. It is a thing that needs to be taught. I just tend to make them learn it somewhere else just because I don't want to spend time talking about it. So when I was selling life insurance, I came to the thought of I need to understand every single aspect about life insurance so that I'm never caught off guard if they have a policy through work, if they have some other company. It was a internal confidence thing when I was newer to make sure that I don't have that spike of adrenaline going, what the heck are they talking about? So if you're taking someone from scratch, it is really important to give them more knowledge than they actually ever need to say, only for the ability to have the self-confidence that you will not be caught off guard. It's it's not I don't need to tell. In fact, me telling you in the cold calling process before I have to lead is probably doing the person I'm handing off a disservice to tell you, but I need to know I'm choosing not to tell you so I can qualify the lead as best as I can. So I think it's incredibly important in any industry. I just don't do it with real estate because I'm bored of real estate.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time on real estate 101 and then sales 101 and then beyond. And the reason, before I ever started Llama, I'd outsourced to a company. And I remember listening to one of the calls, and the guy was like, the house is down to the studs. And the only reference that this girl had was stud meant sexy man. And it blew my mind watching this girl not understand what studs were and trying to figure out like it was just the most embarrassing conversation ever. And so that's just obviously it's a iteration of what's the worst that could happen on one of these types of calls. But the reality is it's like I want them to ask quality questions lead to quality conversations. Well, if you can't articulate about the soffit, the faucet, the gutter, the shutter, the studs, if you can't have a conversation about how the Zillow CEO sold his house for a fraction of what the estimate was. And so I try to give them some baseline conversation because I want them to be able to ask better questions. And not all of it is just like the biggest thing, and I know this is more or less what you're getting to, is the whole industry is caught up on beds, bath, and square footage. And it's disgusting.
It's so annoying. I'm like, my eyes hurt from preemptively rolling for what you just brought up, right? Like, so yes, so what you're touching on is even another level that I think is even more important than even I was talking about, which is being able to actively listen effectively,
yes,
to actually hear what they're saying. So that's most of my training at scale of cold callers. I had to make sure that someone was already training them in real estate because I didn't want to touch on that stuff for them. But you need to be able to do it so they can have it. So one of the things I started training on was that when you're in the sort of gathering stage of information about a property, I just taught them a framework to engage a little bit more. So the first thing was just mirror after. If you have to ask about the roof, right? Let's just say you have to ask about it.
Sure.
After what they say, just mirror. I don't care what it is, just mirror. That's the process. So they're like, yeah, so tell me a little bit about the roof. Is it in good condition or how old is it? Well, it's 15 years old, but there haven't been any leaks. It's in pretty good condition. So they would just, by default, pretty good condition? And they would go, well, yeah, because I mean, we had a leak one time, but like we fixed that up, and that was 8 years ago, so everything's been good. And then I would teach them to do a lock-on question. So it's a version of mirroring, but then I pick a thing and ask for more clarity. So I might go, when you say there was a leak 8 years ago, would you be willing to tell me a little bit more about that? I'm just lock you on something you said and ask you for more clarity. And they would go, well, blah, blah, blah. And great. Okay, now that you've done those two things, you can move on to your next scheduled question. And that was what I trained on. And so for me, it helps the active listening to actually know what to ask about. But I just made sure they did that every time. And for the most part, with basic knowledge of real estate, that was able to be enough. It might even just, because if you don't know what studs are, at least you go, when you say down to the studs, tell me a little bit more about what you mean. And then in the recording, we can clarify it, even if that individual doesn't know. It's getting to the result the same way, but you're right. Like, you need to be able to understand what's being said to you so that you know what to ask.
I was getting on my team the other day about the depth of the questions. Like, I'm a big proponent, again, of 2 ears, 1 mouth, and that happens because of quality questions. It's the lifeline. It's the DNA of sales. There's good questioning. And the other day I was irritated with them. So I pulled all my team leaders into a room and I asked one question and I did a little follow-up. And it's like, well, how does that make you feel? All right, but what would that mean to you? And how will this impact you? And fucking 15 minutes later, and my sales director, he caught on pretty fast because he made this little smirky look like he knew what I was doing right there. And I said, okay, I now know everything about what's happening on the floor because of this one line of questions. And you got your guys out there stopping at, the second level, et cetera, et cetera. So we're definitely in alignment, Ian, here on the power of questions and what they can do. Will people learn your guys' sales framework, your guys' sales course? I don't want to call it a course if it's not, but what is Vivid Selling and how do we, I guess, kind of learn more, et cetera?
Vivid Selling is my questioning framework. I'll just touch on it very briefly. It's an acronym that stands, because I believe, I'm working on a book on this because I think we're worthy of another book going deeper into some of these things now. So I'm working on it. But Vivid stands for the vision for where they want to go, identify the gap between where they are currently and where they want to be.
Yes.
Validate, but not necessarily agree with their hesitations and concerns at all times. And the second I is where the money's made, the impact of not taking action. Like, what happens if you do nothing? And can I quantify that problem? And then finally, what would they like to decide to do? And it's a flow. So it's like, it's focusing on going deeper. So this is what I train on. It's my Instagram name, Vivid Selling, because I believe so much in this framework. It was designed for high ticket. I made it to sell mentorship for Steve Trang, but I found that I can do it in any industry doing anything. There's just some minor adjustment. Like, as you know, sales is communication. The adjustments are often pretty minor. It's like a variable. It's like, instead of making money, it's like, where are you moving? It's just such a minor shift to be able to ask it about anything. Especially when you're orienting around them verbalizing what's important instead of me trying to tell them. I don't pitch anything. I just ask questions. Yep. So that's the framework. The way to get into it is like, you could text CLOSE, CLOSE, to 33777. That's to have a conversation about joining the Advanced Sales Mastery Program. Yeah. CLOSE to 33777. That's our setup. Because the Advanced Sales Mastery Program, like, I am in deep admiration of people who are getting someone into sales. And most of my Close More Sales podcasts, it's an audience who's like maybe trying to get into it. And I love that. I'm a sales evangelist. I think I say on that podcast, a sales role is the lowest barrier, but the highest possible ceiling for entry onto the path of financial freedom. Active income is how you make passive income. Like, make more money with what you do, choose to love it, and life opens up for you. I believe that so firmly. But the program is for people going from good to great. So we start including stuff of like, instead of, at this point, you shouldn't be going like, how do I close? Like, there's plenty of people who can give you stuff for that. Mine is where it's like, you want to go deeper. You want to get that extra 10%. You want to learn how to use a closing question that has variables, including their motivation within it. You know how to shut up and get them to say more. You know how to use the same type of language that they use. If someone just is describing their divorce and they go, man, I feel like my wife pulled the rug out from under me with this divorce, I start positioning my solution as, you feel like if we were able to get you in your next house, you'd feel like your feet are firmly planted on the ground. I do an inverse of the same language from how you describe your pain. This is what we train on, is like the advanced stuff that I know you would be like, I'm not, because that's who it's for.
Exactly.
If you're just getting new in sales, it's going to be like, yeah, you're learning division. You shouldn't be in calculus 2, right? Like, so there's a step to it. We want to ascend people to it eventually. But that's most of the stuff we train on.
Yeah, I love that too, because everybody's in different stages of their journeys. But if you do understand the vivid selling process, and I love it, I knew that was an acronym for something. But these questions are so important. And so, like, some major takeaways from today's conversation really are the power of the questions, and how to go deep and how to follow through with them. You know, we didn't talk too much about resilience, but behind all of this is that resilience, because you are taking through a certain amount of no's to be able to get to this yes, and taking the stuff that they learn from you or from whoever their mentors may be and actually enacting it. And I love what you said about how you iterate, and like, you would record yourself and then you would play it back, and you would do it in Automobile University, which is just you driving around with your wife and making your wife listen to one of your calls. What a savage of a husband you are.
I know. She's taking a nap though. She's like, I'm going to sleep. I'm like, perfect. Let me put on a sales call.
Yeah, I love it, man. One thing I appreciate about, so real quick before we end, I'll tell you my feelings on Steve Trang. I was so confused by that man in the beginning, because he was the antithesis of every mentor I had ever had. He was quiet. He was doctor-like. He was technical. He wasn't rolling around in his Ferrari. He wasn't like flashy. He wasn't loud. He wasn't, but the technical skills, it's like, I look at him and I keep on using the doctor reference. I look at him as like the doctor. Like, I would walk into his clinic and immediately listen to everything this guy's got to say. And so what I appreciated about today and being able to meet you too is, again, you have that same authenticity. And so what I'll tell everybody out there, whether it's Ian Ross, Stephen Trang, that this group of guys right now for the REI space is a bright light. And what I always say is, like, that light is the world's best disinfectant. There's some other coaching strategies and styles that really aren't substantive. But to get something that you said that you can devour on, and we want people to like check into this vivid selling thing, because there's not enough authenticity, particularly in the REI space. I can't talk about all these other verticals, and I don't know if you help in other verticals or not, but I'm super happy and thankful that guys like you exist out here in this space, man.
I appreciate that so much, Scott. To end on a very quick thing on a resiliency, to make that point at home. First off, I'll a little bit toot my own horn a little bit. Well, Steve and I were just at an event for Whale Club. And afterwards, he was like, Ian's in the back of the room if you want to have a conversation about what we're doing. He's the other sales trainer at Disruptors. And at dinner afterwards, he came up to me. He's like, I should have actually said what was true, which is that Ian's the better sales trainer at Disruptors. I was like, yeah, you should have. And everyone laughed. And he's like, man, you said that quickly. I was like, we're all thinking it, Steve. So that's my own thing. It's like, because he's like, the stuff I'm teaching, like things like, is this, I have a whole thing on or question. Is this something you want to do soon, or is there something I'm missing? Yeah. Either one doesn't matter. I want to hear it. Like, he's like, you've got your thumb on the scale to like, any of the questions, you're putting a magnet underneath the scale.
Yes.
If I do this right, it's entirely your decision. I didn't pressure you. But I've phrased language in such a way where the natural conclusion is you either disqualify yourself or you want to move forward with me. So like, there's that point. But in terms of resiliency, just touch on this point. It can be very easy to get distracted in a sales role because so much you see the celebration as for the results, right? You see the Ferrari or Bugatti, you see the big checks on social media, you see the Rolex, you see all of that. But the people who are really, really good, who are not just like social media thumbs up good, but actually operators who want to change people's lives and do this at scale, and who maybe like us aren't great marketers, but are incredible salespeople. Like we're not incredible marketers. We're not good at it. We're amazing if you're in our room and going through our training.
Yes.
Is understanding that we are not committed to the results, actually. We are so incredibly focused on the process and getting better and doing enough activity. And if you focus on those two things, something magical happens. First off, yes, you get the results eventually. But another thing that happens when you get that no, which is inevitable, the people who say, I get yes 100% of the time,
liars.
Andy Elliott, who are charlatans and liars when you say that.
Yes.
The reality is you get no's because not everyone is a prospect anyway. As Zig Ziglar said, you shouldn't sell everyone. Not everyone's a fit. So what does that mean? That means when I hear that no, something really important is happening. I did a part of my job. That was a win, so I can move on to the next one. It's not I wish it was a yes, it's a no, on to someone who could be a yes. No, my goal is to do the process and get better at it and do enough activity so that I'm tired at the end of the day. So when I go home to my wife and small kid, I can be like, I worked my butt off today. The results come. And what happens then is I don't get burned out. When you're like, I've got high energy, you want this for your family, yes or no? You get burned out when you get no's because you're trying to force someone to do something they didn't want to do. Instead, I'm committed to my process and doing enough activity in that process. And if I can celebrate the activity and getting better, I promise you the results will blow these social media clowns out of the water. That's where success is. Be obsessed with getting better and doing enough activity to actually get better, not just get better in isolation. Right? Like you have to do the work as you get better. If that is your focus, you will make more money in a sales role than a Beverly Hills surgeon, and you're just having conversations all day.
I love that. I always say the process is stronger than the product. And I'm a big believer that once you have the process down, like it'll take you to new heights. And so we're in absolute alignment. At Vivid Selling on Instagram, give us that phone number to text the word close to one more time.
33777. That's to see if you qualify for the Advanced Sales Mastery Program.
Dude, it's been a couple of weeks coming right now for this podcast. Yeah. I'm super thankful. I'm super appreciative. I love quality conversations about sales, and that's exactly what today was. I appreciate you coming out, brother.
I would love to have you on the Close More Sales podcast or something. I could do this all day.